We have a special guest this morning. Pippa Jarvis is going to be bringing us special violin music for our prelude and also our postlude, so I know that you want to give her your special attention.
As we come together this morning, let us be at peace with ourselves and be aware of the source of being common to us all and to all living things. With humility, with awareness of the existence of life and of the suffering that goes on around us. Let us pray that we ourselves cease to be the cause of suffering to one another. And evoking the presence of the great compassion, let us fill our hearts with our own compassion for ourselves and towards all living things. Now, to help me light the chalice, Margot Suter. Now, could you join with us in reading the call to worship? Come, let us gather. We gather to celebrate the sacred communion among us. We come to seek spiritual growth and understanding. We strive to practice acceptance, forgiveness, and love. Together we work to build a world of justice and compassion. Come, let us gather together.
Life is suffering, says a core teaching of Buddhism. How does the central suffering of each of our lives shape who we are and how we live? How can our ability to connect with others in compassion, which literally means suffering with, lead to healing and new life? In this service, we will explore different stories about compassion for self and compassion for others, and how suffering can be transformed by human connection. It is not an easy subject, and at times there may be more questions than answers. For many years, I've led an outpatient psychotherapy group for people who have major mental illness. All the people in my group have really suffered a lot. There are people who have lost marriages, careers, friendships. A woman who lost custody of a beloved child who she hasn't seen in 15 years, doesn't know if she'll ever see again, even though they're probably in the same city. They have been in hospitals for psychotic episodes, bipolar disorder, drinking problems, one for multiple suicide attempts. She really came very close to dying. Most are living on Social Security disability and mass health at this point, which is not easy. I often think I would never be able to do as well as them in that regard. Some of their childhoods were very painful as well. Some suffered physical or sexual abuse or neglect in their families, had parents who were mentally ill or alcoholic, rigid, punitive religious upbringings which resulted in alienation from any sort of religious connection. And they have a lot of anger about that. This is just a partial list. If you knew the details, it would break your heart. They all feel such a sense of shame and failure in life. They are robbed of peace of mind and of their very selves and the lives they all hoped for. But they haven't given up. All the people in this group have been working towards recovery in remarkable ways. They are real troopers. The group had been very small for a long time, going along quietly doing its work. But 3 years ago, I had an opportunity to add some new members within a short time frame. One of them was a very reluctant joiner. He was coming at the behest of his individual therapist, who I think was, understandably, having a hard time bearing the burden of his needs. He was a handful. From the beginning, though the group welcomed him and tried to engage him, he would look down, not make eye contact, and it was like pulling teeth getting him to participate. When he did talk, he would protest that he didn't belong here, he had nothing in common with these people. He would talk about how bad he was feeling, he was so depressed, he had lost everything, he was helpless to do anything about it. but insisted that his depression was coming from poor business decisions and from being back in Boston and the cold weather. Well, if it was this winter, I could understand that. But the other members had a different take on this, and they tried to help him explore what could be going on beneath the surface. Eventually, he revealed more about his history, in which, though he had come from an affluent family, he too had suffered emotional neglect and humiliation. But he couldn't bear being vulnerable. I guess the shame was too great. He couldn't take in the good they had to offer. Every time he got closer to the group, he would turn on them. The attacks became more vicious. He would tell people outright that they were losers. He would make fun of them for how long they'd been in the group. He would even criticize their political views. He had an unforgettably mocking tone. There was something amazing that happened, though. Even in the face of this cruelty, the other members continued to reach out to him in sincere compassion. Another new member was also a man whose passionate nature was very catalytic, would say to him, "Hey, you're my bro," and would try to make all kinds of connections between the two of them. Another man who was often so sad would say, "I know what you're going through, man. I've been there." Even the women, who were insulted more than the men, did not give up trying. They understood that these barbs were coming from the man's own self-hatred and lack of compassion for himself. It was something to witness, people who had lost so much and yet had so much kindness to offer. Well, compassion does have its limits. Eventually, this situation became untenable. As the others eventually started getting fed up and their anger grew, I was afraid that the man would be scapegoated. Also, he started turning his contempt on me. I was constantly told I'm incompetent, I don't give the group anything. Members were coming to my defense, which they shouldn't have to do. It was getting very chaotic, and I was thinking, I better call one of my old group supervisors and get some guidance with this. But before I did that, I would like to say that the story had a happy ending, but can't, because one day he left in a rage. Sadly, I have no idea whatever happened with him, and I can't help but imagine how life would have gotten better for him if only he had been able to stay. But for the group, this became a turning point. People who had so little compassion for themselves, in fact, had spent years feeling like they were losers, with so much self-blame, began rejecting that label. The bond between the remaining members grew closer. They went from feeling, I am alone, to we're in this together. As each revealed their stories in increasing depth and complexity, their understanding of themselves and each other started to change. And despite the very real ways in which their daily lives are a struggle, the warmth and caring within and between them has blossomed even more. They are so funny now. A lot of times I just have to laugh with them, despite the sadness. With feeling better about themselves, they are also spurred on to be doing more in the world. Some have gone back to school. Others are working in volunteer or paid jobs. There are new love relationships. This is their church. They are truly working on finding acceptance, forgiveness, and love. I am honored to be a part of it. Toward the end of the yoga class I've gone to for years, the teacher Fern guides us through a practice called Kuan Yin. In Chinese, Kuan Yin is the goddess of compassion. Sitting in something like the half-lotus position, one hand sending, one hand receiving. She has us focus on 3 or 4 statements to send to someone in need, be it a loved one, a country in turmoil, even a person with whom one is in bitter conflict. She says, may he or she live with ease and well-being. May they be filled with peace. May they be happy. But before that, she has us say such statements towards ourselves, statements that reflect a true tenderness towards oneself. She says, like looking into a baby's face, welcome these thoughts into your heart. May I love myself as I am. May I be full of contentment. May I be free. I've never had much compassion for myself. In fact, the sources of this for me are not that different from the people in my group. And it's still not easy for me to follow Fern's directions. But as I learn from my group each week, Fern is right. We do all need compassion.
I invite you all to stand and sing our next hymn together. Pat is going to lead us. She will sing the first time through in unison, or solo, and then we will join her, and you can just keep singing that. You'll sing it 4 times, and Pat will finish with a solo again. So please rise.
I will be gentle with myself, I will love myself. I am a child of the universe, being born each moment. I will be gentle with myself, I will love myself. I am a child of the universe, being born each moment. I will be gentle with myself, I will love myself. I am a child of the universe, being born each moment. I will be gentle with myself, I will love myself. I am a child of the universe, being born each moment. I will be gentle with myself, I will love myself. I am a child of the universe, being born each moment. I will be gentle with myself, I will love myself. I am a child of the universe, being born each moment.
Good morning. When you laugh, the world laughs with you. When you cry alone. This was Nina's high school yearbook quote, and to this day, I remember reading it with just the slightest shudder. It seemed unduly harsh and cold-edged for someone embarking on the rest of her life. Where had she absorbed this dark sentiment that she now felt compelled to publish as her high school epitaph? To me, Nina was the picture of happiness and success. Of course, I was a lowly sophomore to her senior, but she really did seem to hold the world in her hands. She was smart, had a gaggle of close friends, a loving family, and was headed to Tufts University to prepare for an international career in something or other. I remember getting a ride from her mother, who was one of those quintessentially involved but not intrusive parents. I admired how she seemed to give Nina the support to catapult herself into the great life. And what could possibly hold Nina back? She could belt a la Ethel Merman, and she was one of a small group to attempt and excel in Chinese. She was always having great times with her close-knit group of funky, intelligent friends who all seemed to be destined for success on one level or another. But what was with this idea of crying alone? Did she really mean it? The more I thought about it, the more I realized she was probably right. Crying, wallowing, being a wet blanket, eventually these behaviors should render a certain isolation. Who needs that kind of energy? The more I thought about it, the more I remembered episodes in my own childhood when I had in fact unconsciously acted out this quote. When I hid my pain and suffering because I was ashamed and blamed no one but myself. To this day, my most poignant memory of childhood suffering is the time I was cruelly bullied in the 5th grade. My family had moved from Connecticut to New Jersey the year before. As one of 4 children, I was the only member of my family to resist the move and somewhat predictably the only one to struggle with the adjustment. It seemed like all the kids in my new school had been playing together since they were in their cribs. It took me a good year to begin to find my place. And so 5th grade was going to be my year. What better way to feel confident and assured than to have a constant friend? My new friend was Anne. We spent the summer together, but something began to go wrong with Anne as we moved from September into October. She didn't seem to like how many new friends I was making, even though she was making them too. Before I knew it, I was on the outside looking in again, and there were several incidents that sent me to the school nurse crying. I could tell people were afraid of Anne as she turned on me in the worst way. Throughout my ordeal, I was too devastated and too embarrassed to reach out to my family. My siblings were all thriving, and I felt my parents expected me to find a way to make it work in this perfect new town in which everyone else was fitting in. So I cried alone for the several months it took for the whole thing to subside. Years later, by the time I understood fully that Anne was troubled, I had buried the episode. But I was aware that I was made forever different by it. I had developed that thick skin that comes from crying alone and essentially overcoming the difficulty. But I was aware that I was forever changed. Crying alone, 10 years old. Not one knowing adult came forward to make it stop. Teachers watched. Parents made phone calls to psychologists, but no one made a public statement that it was wrong and it needed to stop. The adults in our community kept their polite distance from each other, and then we all just moved on. Perhaps this rings a familiar tone. How willing would you be to address this kind of situation in your child's school? As I go to collect my daughter each afternoon and barely make eye contact with the other parents at the school, I wonder. The message was clear then, as it is now. Suffering is to be done in private. It is better that way. We share only what we know will make people love us. We laugh, and the world laughs with us. We experience this norm more often than we can possibly realize. Painfully evident in an article I read just this Friday in the Globe about a pediatrician who took his own life as hundreds of allegations of his sexual abuse are surfacing. This is a quote. One alleged victim, interviewed, said he told his family what happened, but his grandfather decided to keep quiet because he thought nobody would believe them, and it would cause him, his grandson, more problems if they made a big deal about it. It will cause more problems if we make a big deal of our suffering. So we push it down, I agree with the poet William Stafford that this is nothing if not cruel. Says Stafford, I call it cruel and maybe the root of all cruelty to know what occurs but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider, lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no, or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. Each of us needs a group, like Amy's group, a regular space in which to be awake, to know what occurs and recognize it out loud, recognize the pain as well as the joy. A regular space, a container in which to be gathered, heard, accepted, and loved. Sadly, I am fairly certain that our schools and communities are still very much like they were back in the 80s and 70s and 60s. We are still carrying on with our charades of bliss, sending the yearly photos full of smiles. We don't want to make a big deal about that which is not lightness and joy. A few years ago, I ran into Nina's younger brother, Rick, at my high school reunion. As expected, they were both excelling in life. But I could see the pain in his face when he mentioned his mother had recently passed from breast cancer. I imagined Nina having her wildly successful career, international career in something or other, maybe a husband and children, all the ingredients for happiness. And then I imagined her missing her mother. I imagined that she must have felt incredible sadness and that she must have shed many tears. I hope for Nina and for all of us in this human family, a few moments to be awake with people who care, just a few moments to cry together.
I'm dying are the best I've ever find it hard to tell you, 'cause I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Enlarge your world.
In 1985, Roswell and Emily Gilbert were living together in a Fort Lauderdale condominium and had been married for 51 years. They were married in 1934, the day after Calvin Coolidge died, the year after Prohibition was lifted, the year Hank Aaron was born. Emily suffered from osteoporosis, from Alzheimer's disease, and from severe arthritis. Those who knew her testified later that she was in constant pain due to her condition. Once, Mr. Gilbert was called out of a meeting because his wife needed him. And when he got back, she was upset and crying. She told him, "I'm so sick. I want to die, Ross. I just want to die." During cross-examination at his trial, Mr. Gilbert described the events that led up to his wife's death. That day, he took her out to lunch. When they returned, he gave Emily her medication, laid her on the couch, and left for a condominium meeting. A few minutes later, Emily followed him down to the meeting because she needed help. He left and took her back up to the apartment, and as she lay on the sofa, she said, "Please, somebody, help me. Please, somebody, help me." In his own words, here's what happened next. Who's that somebody but me? And there she was in pain and all that confusion, and I thought to myself, I've got to do it. It's got to be me. I've got to end her suffering. This can't go on. I went to the shop in the back where my gun was up on a top shelf with a clip in it. I loaded it with one shell, and I came out, and, well, I shot her in the head. I felt her pulse, and I could still feel it. I thought, oh my God, I have screwed it up. I went back to the shop. This time I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the gun in my hand. I put another round in the gun. I came back and I put another bullet in her head. Then somehow I got to the telephone and called the security guard downstairs, and I said, I just killed my wife. The whole thing was a mess, and to me the only solution was to terminate her suffering. That's all. I didn't consider what would happen to me. The only important thing was to end her suffering. If this was only a matter of law, it would be a simple case. After all, he killed his wife, and he had thought about doing so for at least a month before he put a bullet in her head as she sat on that couch. He was convicted of premeditated murder and sentenced to life without parole. But today, we're not in a court of law, so it's not so clear how to judge Mr. Gilbert. If we could put ourselves in his shoes, if we could sit at his wife's bedside day after day, watching the Florida sun, listening to the ocean in the background, while his wife lies on the couch, and see it all through his eyes, maybe things would look different. He looks at her in a rare, peaceful pose and is grateful for the quiet. He dreams back to when such a scene would have been unimaginable. She, sharp as a tack, besting him in an argument. He, strong as a bull, swinging her in the air. On a beach, perhaps, like the one in front of their condominium. After the case became a cause, photographs of the Gilberts appeared on television. She in a formal gown, he in tails. They together at a restaurant posing for a picture for no reason, the way people do in restaurants. He continues to stare at Emily, who from time to time still believes they're traveling together in Spain. He wonders about love. He loves his wife. He tells her so and has told her so for 51 years. And he thinks of what that means. Her understanding of him, her understanding of others, her sense of humor. Illness has replaced those qualities with screams and a face of panic. Does he still love her? Of course, he hates the disease, but he does still love his wife. Is the frail doll in the bed an imposter? But no, this is the same Emily, hidden somewhere under the decaying cells and in the folds of painkillers. It is Emily, and she is suffering, and he swore he would always look after her. What harm would it do to relieve her pain? How can he think of himself as a compassionate man if he watches the woman he loves suffer horribly every day with no end in sight and no relief in sight, begging for someone to do something, and he does not do anything? Maybe he hesitated, wondering if Emily might get better. Maybe somewhere, somehow, someone would find a cure. And he certainly knows once Emily is gone, he is gone too, since her way of life, however horrible, is their way of life. So he is afraid for both of them. In The Merchant of Venice, Portia says that mercy is twice blessed. It blesses him that gives and him that takes. But after he killed his wife, Mr. Gilbert did not feel blessed. At best, he felt he did what was right, and which the world agrees, but at the same time denies. It was an impossible situation. And we wonder perhaps if one bright morning in 1934, when they were first married and their lives were ahead of them, Mr. Gilbert read of a mercy killing in the paper and leaned across the breakfast table to his new bride and said, "I could never do that." But we don't know what we will do until the moment compassion moves us to do what we must do. How do we judge a man who sacrificed everything to offer compassion to his wife in the only way he thought would matter? How do we offer compassion to a man that murdered his wife?
Dear God, let us give thanks for those moments when we can feel that we live in a world that is not indifferent to our needs, We all have so many needs, 1,000 prayers, 1,000 needs that really only need one answer. Let the world not be indifferent. And may we live and be with each other in a way that shows this truth, that neither are we indifferent to each other. We will now receive the morning offering.
There is a
Please join us in reciting the unison dedication. May these gifts be transformed into strength for this faith community, into comfort, food, and shelter for those in need, and may we be transformed by generosity.
When you're down and troubled and you need a helping hand, and nothing, oh, nothing is going right. Close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten up even your father's night. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you gotta do is call, and I'll be there, yeah. You've got a friend. If the sky above you should turn dark and full of clouds, and that old north wind should begin to blow, keep your head together and call my name out loud. Soon I'll be knocking upon your door. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you gotta do is call, and I'll be there, yes I will. Hey, ain't it good to know that you've got a friend when people can be so cold? Oh, they'll hurt you, yes, and desert you. Oh, they'll take your soul if you let them. Oh, but don't you let them. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you got
May the blessings of life be upon us and upon all of this congregation. May the memories we gather here give us hope for the future. May the love we share bring strength and joy to our hearts. And may the peace of this community be with us until we meet again.